Chapter 24. The Church, Unyielding on Principles. Yet, liberal Catholics are all the time looking for words to reconcile realities that are irreconcilable. No words can do it, and some words are especially resistant. For example, privilege. The Church cannot give away her God-given rights. She can never make concessions of principle. She can at most renounce for a while a right of hers in practice, to nobody's advantage. It is saddening to see the efforts of worthy men who have rendered great services, urging Catholics to accept doctrines which the true Church condemns as compromising the rights and dignity of the Church, and which the adversaries and enemies of the Church reject as being still too imbued with the Christian spirit. All the formulas they propose, being inspired by a spirit of compromise that blurs all distinctions, meet with the same unhappy fate. They speak of the independence of the Church. This word alone is too much for the revolutionaries, who demand it to be suppressed, and at the same time, on the other side, when liberal Catholics speak of the independence of the state, Christians remark that under cover of this word, by the nature of things, they put Christian society under the civil power and make Christianity depend for its livelihood upon the good will of its enemies, who, in all circumstances, show themselves to be not only indifferent, but hostile. Not only hostile, but furious. Liberal Catholics are constantly trying to reconcile the irreconcilable, to obtain for the Church a grace that no one wants to grant it, to submit the Church to conditions of grace such as she cannot accept. No wealth of eloquence can long hide this basic, irremediable misfortune, and no words in any language have enough elasticity to draw such contradictions into agreement and hold them together. Free cooperation, reciprocal independence of the two powers, etc. What do these resounding phrases signify? It is not similar nonsense to speak of free cooperation between body and soul, or reciprocal independence of matter and spirit. There exist expressions that lend themselves less easily to being blurred. For instance, the invitation extended to the Church to renounce her privilege is one such expression offensive to a Catholic ear. For indeed, the Church is divinely constituted and lives by her own right, not by privilege. Whoever would have granted her such a privilege had it not belonged to her by nature? The state? So civil society is then superior to religious society, and can legitimately take back what is generously bestowed? History, along with Christian common sense, condemns the false conception behind such a way of talking. The Church was not created by the state. On the contrary, it is she who created the state and society, and neither the state nor society bestowed any privileges on the Church. They recognize her mode of existence as prior to their own, as endowed with rights in no way deriving from them, and which they can only modify by some abuse of power, against which the public interest is bound to protest. We cannot share the state of ignorance in which the ingratitude of the revolutionaries so carefully encloses itself. We know that the Church grew in spite of pagan power, that she changed the face of the earth, that she is, in a word, the mother and teacher of Christian states, and that the superiority of their civilization is due to her principles, and depends on them to this day. We also know that the Church was able to accomplish this great work, and can defend and maintain it, only by means of the particular constitution with which God endowed her, for her to play her double part in the world as mother and queen, also mistress of the human race by her love, by her light, by her authority. And are we today to castigate the already restrained exercise of her maternal and royal supremacy as being a privilege granted by human beings, which she must finally give up? The Church has even less of a right to abdicate her privileges than society has a right to suspend them, because it is not given her to mistake the source from which they flow, and the end they must achieve. In the presence of an unbelieving or heretical state, she can bear the temporary privation of the exercise of her divine prerogatives. What she cannot do is declare that she gives up these prerogatives, and rejects as harmful or unnecessary what has been not only conferred on her, but imposed on her by God for the good of the world. When the Church signs a concordat, she does not treat with nations as a subordinate, but as a superior. It is she who does the granting. She does not receive privileges. She bestows them. She bestows them reluctantly. For if she thus avoids a greater evil, experience has proved all too often that these concessions are hardly to the general good, since nothing that weakens the Christian sense of things can turn to anyone's advantage. The argument that liberalism thinks to draw from these concessions, contrary to the general rule, is unworthy of Christian reasoning. In the first place, the Church gives away nothing when it comes to principles. She signs no treaty in which they are not preserved. In the second place, exposed to the angry blows of force, and with no other natural defense than her patience, the Church, as Joseph de Maistre profoundly observed, grants where the secular power insists what it wants, but only to everyone's disadvantage. Translator's note. Joseph de Maistre, who lived from 1753 to 1821, was a renowned Catholic writer of Savoyard origin, who vigorously defended the principle of authority. Authority comes from God. The authority of the Pope is absolute within the Church. His authority can override that of secular princes. End translator's note.